Welcome to Leaders with Heart. My name's Paddy McDonald. I'm a peak performance coach for purpose-driven leaders and the host of this podcast. And today we're speaking with Jody Dontje, who is an incredible public speaking coach that's just returned from the World Public Speaking Championships over in the US, where she came in the top 28 people in the world on public speaking. And she shares some of the lessons and insights she got from that experience, where she was able to identify the things that make the great stand out. And from her experience of really refining her own message and her own voice, she has so much to share with us about how we can apply the same thing to our businesses, to our relationships, and to our lives in general. So enjoy this conversation. There's plenty of gold there if you choose to apply it. And if you have any questions or want to go deeper on any of the stuff that's shared in this conversation, you can always reach out to us both via the links in the show notes below. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to Leaders with Heart. I'm here today with my good friend Jody, who is the founder of Alchemy Queen and a speaking and abundance coach, and so excited for this conversation today. And
I'm so honored.
Yeah, thanks for being here, because when it comes to people who are excelling at their craft and sharing their mission with the world, you're definitely someone that comes to mind in our community and beyond. So really excited to dive into who you are, but also the specifics of the world of speaking, public speaking, which I think a lot of people are aware of the fact that this is the greatest fear that humans have, even above death.
Yeah.
And so to have someone who's able to share some practical pieces, but also some of the underlying mechanics of our psyche that influence that is a real privilege. So thanks for being here.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, and I know you've just come back from a trip to the US where you were sharing on stage at the World Public Speaking Championships.
Yeah.
And you came 28th out of the world.
Yeah, in the top 28, yeah.
Yeah, in top 28. Okay, amazing. So out of 8 billion, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, not every 8 billion, competed, but yes. Yeah.
Amazing. How was that experience for you?
Oh, it was incredible. I got to the world stage 2 years ago as well. At that stage, it was a 4-year journey doing speech contests specifically in that category. And it was an amazing honor then, and it was an amazing honor again, to go back and basically represent Australia, and shout out to, Region 12 and D73, who I'll be representing, or who I represented as well. And it was amazing because every single time I'm on that stage, it reminds me of why I do what I do. Yeah. It takes a whole year to get through many rounds to then find out if I could even compete in the semi-finals, and then I got to the semi-finals again, and it was just like, wow, amazing. Yeah. But there's also years where, I don't make it. And so it's a humbling experience to keep showing up with courage each time and trusting in that there's always another message in me that's important that I want to share, and leading with that contribution, right? And it was so close this year. I was closer than I've ever been to reach the top 8. It was a very high level contest group. We get split from 28 into 4 groups, and it's the luck of the draw with what group, we get put in. Yep. And obviously they're all high standard. But particularly our contestant group was next level. So I'm honored to have been, competing with such a high level, range of speakers. Yeah. But definitely, had that little taste of getting so close to the finals, but then humbling myself to go, keep going.
Yeah, next time there's more. It's incredible. And what was the message that you were excited to share this time?
Yeah, I'm allowed to speak about it now. I wasn't allowed to speak about it for a whole year because it's the part of the rules.
Hot off the press.
Basically, I brought a concept in coaching of the inner child into a mainstream way of, kind of thinking about it. And there's a lot of people in Toastmasters and with the world stage of public speaking who might not have thought about the concept of the inner child, which is that younger version of ourselves, and listening to that younger version of ourselves within. And I wanted to bring that concept into the mainstream. Yeah. So I told a quite funny story. I had bits of humor, but it was also a very emotional story about how I became disconnected from a really passionate joy in my life, and then had to overcome a fear to claim that again. And talking about how the inner child was the one leading me to do that. And I was listening to little Jody and letting her share with me what she needs. And I had a lot of people coming up to me after saying how important that message was for them, and how they've taken away that they're going to talk to their inner child, and they're going to ask her, ask him or her what they can do more of in their lives, in their business, in their relationships. So
beautiful.
It was wonderful.
I love that. Definitely can vouch for inner child work as super powerful. And I would love to dive into that a bit more, but first I'd actually like to hear a bit more about the experience of being at the world stage in this elite level competition. We've just come off an Olympics year, and everyone's very in that mindset of witnessing the best in the world do their thing. And what is it that you found from the people that were able to make it to that level that distinguishes them from other people who are good but just haven't quite like nailed those finer points of public speaking?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably 3 or so different areas. You know, one is, and this is not to say that people who don't get through aren't, you know, aligned to this, because sometimes just the lack of the draw of who are the judges that day or other, you know, pieces. But I have found that those who do make it to the semi-finals and the finals, they really have a passion in them that it's a message they've got to get out there. It's almost like it's this feeling of this has to reach the masses. And that's part of what keeps us going, you know, in this type of competitive space, because it is basically the Olympics of public speaking. And there are many rounds to keep being courageous and to get to that level. So it's very much being led by that message. And, you know, I competed in this particular category for 4 years, and the 2 years that I got to the semi-finals, those were the years that I knew that message was really important. The other 2 messages were important, but I didn't have the same energy. And the one, you know, the 2 times that I did get through, I was so like, this is going to reach the world stage. So I found that was very common to a lot of semi-finalists, that they have a message that really matters to them. Number 2 is there's just another level of skill, you know, stagecraft, tonality, pauses, storytelling, engaging the audience. There's no formula in this speaking arena, and yet there are still similarities in being able to really have the audience feel like they're part of the story and they're very connected to the message. So when I've seen people who haven't gone through and people who have gotten through, it's very much, it's a message and a way of delivering that message that matches that particular audience and therefore the judges. Right? That's very important. And thirdly, it's just showing up on that day and doing the best they can in that high intense environment. Sometimes people, because they're nervous, they go too fast and they get disqualified, you know, or they're too nervous and they forget parts, so those who go through, like, they're really starting to craft their ability to have courage in moments that are quite high stress.
Wow, I love that. I love that, because I really see the parallels there with other fields of excellence, including business, including leadership, and really whatever anyone wants to be good at in their life. Like what I heard you say there is being passionate about what we're doing, having that personal connection to it, and then secondly, mastering the skills, the actual mechanics of it, and thirdly, being able to handle pressure. Like, that's so universal. So what an amazing stage to practice that on.
100%.
What do you find for yourself, like what's been the biggest journey in developing one of those 3 things? Has there been like any particular one that you really like struggled with at first and needed to, you know, find some other way to master it?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few. If I go and combine the stagecraft with the message, the more I've come home to my heart, which is very aligned to what you represent here on the podcast, right? But the more I've come into my heart and the more I've humbled myself in focusing on the speech being about the audience, being about the message, the better I've gotten as a speaker. And when I first started speaking, I'd always had a contribution energy from the beginning. However, there were times where I got into my head and I thought more about, you know, myself, like what are they going to think about me, or are they going to judge this part of the speech, and that was the beginning part of my, you know, professional speaking career. And the more I've let go of that and I've made it less about me and I've made it more about who I'm serving and the message, the more I've gotten out of my head, and then just my heart leads and people feel that. And that was really what I think got me to the stage this year, especially again to the semi-finals, was this message was very close to my heart. And it was a topic that hadn't been spoken about on the world stage before. From my experience, after having watched now hundreds of semi-final and final, you know, videos over the years, it was a theme that hasn't been talked about, the inner child specifically. So I was like, well, I'm passionate about bringing that to the stage.
And everyone has one, right?
Everyone has
so
one.
Universal.
Wow, And so that was really what fueled me. And I think that's also what helped me become better at business and better with the people that I serve, is that the more I come into my heart, more I can also attune to what they are needing, right? And then I can serve better too. So it's also applying to all areas.
It's actually a a topic I've been journeying with recently in my own marketing journey, with being able to share my message, because I feel like sometimes there's a bit of a push and pull between sharing really authentically with what the message is that feels like it's coming out from within, and then meeting the market or the audience or whoever is being served with where they're at, and making sure the service is actually there to serve and not just to be seen.
Yes.
And so that sounds like something you've like got some perspectives on, which I'd love to hear.
Yeah. I mean, if we talk about it from a marketing perspective, right, there's different ways of calling this. And one particular school I'd learned that it's like the sidewalk, the slow lane and the fast lane.
Yeah, I've read that book.
Yeah. And so it's very much, when we're, like, first we need to get clear ourselves. Like, what are we passionate about? Who are we passionate about serving? What problem? What paradise do we want to get them to? And what is the vehicle that we can offer as the vehicle that gets them from problem to paradise, right? And essentially, when we're talking on social media or public speaking, masterclasses, social posts, whatever it is, we've got to think about there's some people that they'll be on the sidewalk. They're kind of aware of the particular world that we work in, or they kind of are aware that they have some challenges, but not really. But then they see our post, they see a masterclass and they go, yeah, right. Right. So we can speak to a more maybe general audience in that way, or we can give specific examples of the beginning of our journey that could connect to them. But then we have the slow lane, which is like, they're kind of like, yeah, I know I have another elevation, or I know this is my challenge, or whatever it is, but they're not sure if we're the right person. So then we're kind of sharing things where we're showing people that we've really embodied it, we've really experienced it, we know what those pains are, and we're connecting more to them. So they're kind of like, this person could be someone who could help me with that, right? If we talk about it from a marketing business perspective. And the fast lane is like, they know they have the problem. They know they want to get to the solution. They're really like, it's time, right? And they just want to know who can help them specifically. And then they see our content and they go, boom. And the amount of times I've had people go, I feel like it was the universe bringing me to you, like exactly when I needed you, you showed up, things like that. They're in the fast lane. Like, they've gone on their journey and they're ready to be supported. So when we are thinking about social media posts or masterclass, we've got to think about where people are at, right? And meeting them and using different stories or different language to connect to where they're at, to help them along their journey, along their path.
And is that something you do from the stage as well when you're sharing a story or sharing a speech? Because you've got a diverse crowd, I'm sure, of many people with different receptivity to what you're sharing. How do you tailor a message that can hit as much of the cross section as possible?
It's a good question. I'll break it into the professional speech contest, or rather the high level speech contest, I should say, or then professional speaking from business. What I do there. So on the speaking arena with the world stage of public speaking and such, I just more think about it with the concept that I'm wanting to get across, and just making it as tangible as possible through storytelling, humor, sharing a kind of journey. And I don't necessarily think about like people who really get it, people who don't. I just think about it as, what is the main message, and just how can I make it as tangible as possible, so anyone can really connect to that, right? And then when it comes to professional speaking in my business, when I'm doing big speaking events, for example, I'll share stories about the beginning of my journey and challenges I had, limiting beliefs, so that people in the audience who might still have those limiting beliefs can start to go, what if that's a limiting belief I have? Oh, no, right? But then there's other people in the audience who already have overcome that. So then I'm also sharing stories from the next level and point of view. But really, I got to say, like, now I feel that the most aligned people just come to me. And I just, am in that energy field of, often my audience is now just perfect. They're all there. They all have a common value around spirituality, wanting to bring holistic approaches to business, wanting to be more in the feminine and not rely on just the masculine survival energy in business or with speaking. So right now I don't really think too much about it. It's very organic. Like they're just ready to go. A lot of the people that I have come to me now. But at the beginning of the journey, when I was kind of more trying to figure out my message or who I want to speak to, I thought more about it.
Beautiful. You mentioned in there a topic which is something that we both know is very powerful and might also be new to some people there as well, which is that the concept of there being different perspectives or ways of navigating situations that can be divided into a masculine approach or a feminine approach. And to be clear, we're not talking about gender of like men versus women. We're talking about this just categorization of different different styles of navigating things. And this goes back to the yin and the yang of the old spirituality in Eastern philosophies, goes back to even concepts like light and dark. So it's something that is pretty universal. How have you applied that to business and how you're evolving in your own journey of dancing with those two energies?
Yeah, well, to kind of go back to the essence of this, in the 3D world, like this physical, tangible world of matter and, of essentially we are energy, so of this matter and energy, we have to have polarity. That's just what helps everything exist, right? The light and the dark. And we have the same thing when it comes to our feminine and masculine. It's like we want to work with both. And there's a beautiful energy when we start to cultivate the two of them. We start to embrace our polarity as a leader, as a speaker, as a person. But see, at the beginning of my journey, let's talk about business, right? So I know a lot of people have businesses or they are leaders in some way. So when I was starting to really become that leader in business, I found that I swung to the masculine and was that very push energy. And we've just come from the era of the masculine in society, in the world. We're going more into the feminine now. But I was still in that masculine. So that energy is doing, pushing, being very from the mind. And that's quite a controlling energy in a way. And I was very much in that. So I reached 6 figures pretty quickly in 15 months of my business and was very successful very quickly. But that was at the detriment of my health. I was burning out. That was at the detriment of my personal life. Like my relationships weren't that great. I wasn't really spending a lot of time with friends and family. I was disconnected, and I kind of had an awakening where I was like, "Oh, this is not sustainable." Right, and then I came into finding out and going on a big journey of the feminine and realizing that wow, I actually can be more successful by doing things like choosing the flow energy, choosing to trust, following my intuition, following my superconscious. We call it in alchemy. I'm bringing quite ancient wisdom from alchemical times into the mainstream. It's one of my main missions actually, is to bring ancient spirituality, ancient work around alchemy into the mainstream, into business, into speaking, the arena. And I found that once I learned the world of alchemy, which is very much about embracing the polarities and then coming more into the feminine, I tripled my income. I called in the most incredible aligned friends and community that I ever could have dreamed of. My relationship was so much better with my family, partner at the time, all these people, and really found I came such a long way in such a small amount of time once I embraced the feminine. But this doesn't mean F you masculine, right? Because I still need to be held in the container. I still want to take courageous action. I love systems and I love organizing things, but it's the energy I bring to that. And then I've taught that to other people, and then boom, they get the same type of results. And it's like, whoa. And then I brought that to the coaching and the speaking. And I saw that people getting bigger breakthroughs with my speaking. I think right after I embraced the feminine, that's when I got to the world stage of public speaking for the first time. So like all these things were happening, but it was really from an energy of not forcing. And it was like, I was clear on my vision. I did my inner work. I'm very holistic in what I teach. And I think this is why a lot of people do come to me once they're ready for a new way. Not just strategy, but really get to know themselves. So I do the inner work. I release limiting beliefs. I do the somatic work. I do the spiritual practices. And then I just take aligned action. And as long as I keep doing that with a very healthy kind of detachment energy, more than I could ever expect will manifest and come true. And that's what I found in every area of my life. It's extraordinary. Amazing.
Are there any examples that stand out for you that have really kind of helped reinforce for you the trust that this works for you and that might help other people understand it
at a deeper level? Tangible things.
Yeah.
One way is I used to be told by a lot of coaches, you should have every hour of your day sketched out like the week in advance, like these blocks are this, That can work for some people, absolutely. But this is why with alchemy, it's about figuring out what works for us, how we can alchemize, right? And I remember doing that and I hated it. I was like, oh my gosh, every week, like the same blocks of time. And it was just like, there was so much resistance energy. But I was doing it from the masculine of like, well, I've been told I should do this, so I have to do this, and everything's structured. But what I'd find is something that could take me less time. I'd take that whole amount of time that I had blocked out, you know, and I'd be distracted, and it was just not working. So a specific example was I let go of my schedule in that way, and I just started going, what are my intentions to have done by the end of this week? Very lightly, what are the things I'd love to have done? Or what are the things I'd love to have ticked off by the end of today? And having no set time frame in terms of this block. I got to tell you, I got it all done way sooner than I would have with an actual schedule.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and got more done on top of that.
Yeah.
So that's just one tangible example of the calendar. How for some people that very masculine, very structured, very rigid approach doesn't always work. And for me, it didn't. And so then the feminine way of just flowing was amazing.
Yeah, I guess another metaphor that can help people understand it is the idea of the masculine being like the riverbanks, and the feminine being the river itself. And you know, even people are familiar with quotes like Bruce Lee saying, "Be like water," or in is it Taoism, I believe, they talk about Wu Wei, which is the art of not doing. And there's, again, not to say that it's the right approach. It's one half of the equation that when exercised at the appropriate times is super powerful. So
100%.
It's awesome that you're sharing this.
Yeah, thank you. And it's, you know, even as simple as sometimes people are trying to get clear on their ideal avatar, what problems they serve, what post they want to post next, what masterclass topic they want to do. And they sit down in a rigid space and like, I've got to figure this out now. Whereas I used to do that, and then I found sometimes the things that came through a bit more forced. Whereas now I'll set the intention that over the next few days, you know, whatever people believe, but, you know, I ask kind of like universe or energies, like show me what the answer is. Or I'll ask myself before bed, and I'm choosing a very detached, very flowing approach. And every single time I get exactly the download I need. You know, I get exactly what is going to be the topic or the post or the structure of something, or the answer will just come. So that's another energy of like what you said, like Bruce Lee, be like water. I just let the answer flow to me, and it's so much more in a state of trust, and it's never let me down.
Amazing. Amazing.
And that's the same thing with the topics. I got to the world stage those 2 times. Those topics came to me in my sleep. Woke up in the morning and went, that's my speech.
That's a great example actually, because I feel like sometimes when there's a lot to do, it's hard to see any other way other than just muscling through them with grit and determination, which is, again, there's a place for that. But when it comes to the things that move the needle, it's often an idea or a moment. And these are the situations where it becomes clear that actually, you know, us being in a peak state emotionally and being ready for that idea is more important than hustling and putting ourselves in a state of stress to be able to actually receive that. So I really hear that.
Stress response does not help with getting clear messages about what we want to do.
I'd love to hear how you got on this path. So, you know, you've done a lot of your own inner work, and you've had business in multiple forms now, and then the craft of speaking has really been at the forefront of all of that. But just talk a bit about you personally and what has led you on this path of service and mastery.
I mean, I first started specifically focusing on public speaking coaching, and now it's gone into helping women to essentially own their voice, but also elevate their abundance, and that includes money, right? And abundance in all things, and alignment in life, and coming home to themselves. And that's kind of been my journey with all those points. It's coming back home to my true nature and purpose with those areas of life, you know, voice, abundance, and coming home to like alignment of my values. So people hear me speak now and they think I was born naturally with this ability to speak and have confidence. And yes, when I was really young, my grandma called me Bubbles because I was the girl on the playground that was the most bubbliest. I'd run up to every kid and be like, be my friend, let's be friends. You know, I loved life, I loved people.
It wasn't because you could speak underwater?
Magic powers. And what happened was like I became disconnected from who I truly was, my true nature and purpose. And I went through racism and bullying. I'd been pushed to the ground, kicked, being told to go back to my own country. You know, I'm half Chinese and half Dutch. And I did go to some schools where I was one of the only looking multicultural kids. And I felt like a bit of an outsider, right? And so I went through a lot of identity issues, and I formed social anxiety. I went through depressive episodes, to the point it was so bad that I couldn't even leave the house. And if I was to leave the house, I would think anyone that looked at me was judging me. It was so intense. And it was eating me up. Right, and then I went on a journey essentially where maybe I can tell that story in like a little bit, but I went on a journey of different points of kind of awakening back to who I truly am, and realized the power of my voice, and started owning my story, and then came back home to myself, and then my abundance went up more than I ever could have imagined. You know, one of the biggest challenges of my childhood was my parents stressing about money and really struggling. And so I grew up with this idea of like money doesn't help us. Like money is, you know, always just going to be taken away, or there's some kind of issue.
Yeah.
And it's been a big journey of overcoming those pieces as well, alchemizing those pieces. And then what's come from that is by owning my voice more, coming more into who I truly am, the abundance increases. And I truly believe if people are aligned to who they truly are, I mean truly aligned, they've healed the masks and the roles that they think they should have to be accepted in society, and they're coming back home to who they truly are, and they're speaking with confidence and they're owning their voice, abundance is a byproduct and impact is a byproduct. And so, yeah, by coming back into owning my voice, everything else fell into place. And then I realized public speaking is one of the biggest fears in the world. You know, according to Psychology Today and other studies, like people would rather be in a really small space with spiders really high up or even die, like you said. So arachnophobia, heights, claustrophobia, even death rated lower than public speaking.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, wow, this is a really big issue that a lot of people are facing. So this is something I've got to do something about, you know, and because I know how it feels to be on the other end of that spectrum.
Yeah, it's such an interesting perspective to think about it in that context of it being more terrifying than death to the majority of people. Yeah. And I was in that position, definitely growing up, had that relationship with public speaking and had my own journey of finding confidence and finding myself in expressing.
Yeah.
But what I hear in that fear of being afraid of public speaking, ultimately I see that as a fear of judgment amongst other things. But what I see sometimes happen with people looking to develop their public speaking is they find the ways that they won't be judged. And they find the ways that they can get up and share something that is going to fit in really nicely, but isn't actually who they are.
Yeah.
And being real in the business world, there's a lot of people in professional settings that, you know, have good intentions, but the speeches that they give are very cookie cutter, and they're very very black and white. And I've done that. That was me as well. And so I'm hearing from what you're sharing as well that there's another way where it can be more of a claiming of expressing who we are and what we have to share, and also finding a way to have that accepted within ourselves before it even gets out to be accepted by the outside world as well. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that or reflect back on that point?
Well, you know, first I want to really validate your vulnerability, you know, and for you to notice that journey that you've been on too with your voice. And I mean, you're now, you know, hosting amazing podcasts and putting yourself out there, and it's so beautiful to witness. And I love seeing that. I love seeing people who can go through the journey of owning that that's a fear, you know, really embracing that with beautiful authenticity, and then sharing and using their voice. And you're a great example of that, you know, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and you're so right. Like this world right now, especially because we're in the feminine era, this is not saying the female era. This is not like, oh, women only. And no. We're in the feminine era, which means we're in the era of radical self-expression from a place of authentic acceptance of all of who we are. And choosing the feminine way of intuition again, and all these pieces, being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to be real. And so we need more authentic leaders and speakers right now in this world than ever. And that means owning our vulnerability within ourselves first. You know, one of the things in alchemy is called the negredo, which is accepting and looking at the shadow parts of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that we'd rather keep secret and no one can know. And the more we can embrace and heal the traumas, you know, both on all different body levels, and we can release any of the pains around those parts of our childhood, or like a lot of the time people have public speaking fears too because of specific experiences that happened in their childhood where they were made fun of, or something embarrassing happened and they're holding that against themselves, and their body's still holding onto that trauma and that tension. And the more we can do the inner work and the shadow work and do those pieces and alchemize that then into strength, from shame to strength, pain to power, we then feel that confidence within ourselves, and then we can be more authentic outwardly, right? But definitely is an inward journey, because otherwise it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to speak at this meeting, but I'm going to be speaking from a place of what this mask that I'm wearing, this professional mask, should be doing, and the shoulds and the shoulds, and we should all over ourselves, until a point that people years down the road wake up and go, I don't know who I am. And that's I think what my biggest fear is of humanity. It's like when I see a cemetery, I don't just see people who've passed away, but like there's families that could have been created if people were vulnerable enough to go into relationships, or there's books that could have been written, courses that could have changed lives. Like there's so many incredible gifts that were taken to the grave because people weren't willing to, and I feel emotional about this, and people weren't willing to do the inner work and accept and love themselves enough, and then lead from the heart and be authentic. Just going about life, fitting in the box, trying to be accepted. And
It's a big one.
Yeah.
So if anyone's listening to this and is hearing what you're sharing and is really resonating and believing in the truth of it, but feeling like it's a big mountain to climb and like doesn't even know where to start, what would be somewhere to start?
When we talk about owning our voice, sometimes people come to me like, you just do public speaking, right? It's like, no, our voice is communication and being in our truth. Our voice is knowing who we are. So I would say if people have they get freaked out by this idea of speaking on big stages, or all of a sudden getting this big social media presence, or doing the big masterclasses, or the Facebook Lives, or whatever it is that they're afraid of, that's their next stage, literal stage or otherwise. We've got to come back to our voice in our daily life. Like, where in our life in general can we speak more of our truth? Where in our life in general could we, with our partner or our friends or our family, share vulnerabilities? Where in our life can we put boundaries into place or ask for what we need? The more we can practice just owning our voice in everyday life and feeling strength in who we are, what we stand for, what we don't stand for, the more it builds a sense of confidence that we can bring onto stages, because then we hold ourselves in a lot of strength, right? Because the greatest speakers in the world aren't just great speakers that stand for something. The greatest speakers in the world and leaders are the ones who don't stand for certain things. They know their boundaries and they know what's not okay and what is okay. And that strength within themselves as a person translate to how successful then they get on stages, or in business and as leaders. So I would say, I'd say to them, think about their life in general and rate themselves between 1 to 10 in different areas of life to how they're owning their voice. Relationships, business, social media, actual stages, in meetings specifically, and then really get real with themselves. Just ask themselves what's really going on. So truth first, right? We call it negredo. Facing that negredo truth. What's really not aligned? What are those areas that aren't really where they want it to be? And then just coming into the energy of, okay, what would I want it to be? If everything was 10 out of 10, what would that be like? Feel that, sense that, and then simply just follow the next aligned action, whatever that might be. If that's simply going to the partner that evening and saying, I don't feel like spaghetti. I feel like schnitzel, I don't know, something. But like as simple as that, just taking that next aligned action of their voice, and it will just snowball and everything will start to fit into place. And then eventually, who knows, they might be on a world stage, which I never imagined. Like little Jody was going through racism and bullying. She was afraid to put her hand up in class, let alone speak in front of, a reach of hundreds of thousands of people. Like, we don't know where the journey's going to take us, but we've just got to trust that next step with our voice.
I love that. I love that. And if anyone is feeling like this is one of their biggest challenges and fears in life and an area that's holding them back, I feel like you're an example, and I resonate with this myself, of the fact that our biggest weaknesses are often given to us so that they can become our biggest strengths. 100%. So if you're hearing this and it's bringing up some fear, then there might be something in that.
Yeah. Absolutely. If someone's hearing this and shutting down and being like, that's too far-fetched, or, oh, I can't even go there, love whatever part that is, because it's the medicine in that part that's going to be the way forward, right? Where whatever we resist persists, And whatever we resist is the key to the next level of elevation. So I would say the key to that then is curiosity.
Yeah.
What am I feeling right now as I'm hearing these stories?
Yeah.
What's coming up in my body when I'm hearing these invitations, you know?
Yeah.
And then just being curious.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So we're going to start to land the conversation and bring it to a close, but I would love to hear about the inner child speech that you gave, and if there's any core message from that you want to share on this platform as well.
Yeah, well, is it cool that I kind of bring that into maybe what was the point that shifted everything for me as a speaker? Because I think it's what led to a lot of the vulnerability that I brought on stage.
Beautiful.
Like when I was in university, I volunteered more than I ever worked for money. And so during uni, I was doing a lot of volunteering and I was invited a lot to speak, right? And I guess my inner child was shutting down, like, oh no, I can't share my story, and I was afraid to share about my childhood. And so I shut down a lot of opportunities. And one day I think I was researching, I should say, for an assessment for a uni, and I stumbled across this YouTube video from Brené Brown called The Power of Vulnerability.
Ah, so good.
So good.
So good.
And I remember going, vulnerability is strength?
Yeah.
What? Oh my gosh. And so then literally the next day, crazy, I straight away got asked again, will you speak and tell your story? And in particular, it was to a group of Indigenous Australian high school kids. And I was like, oh gosh, well, this video did say vulnerability is power, so okay. So I got up there, and it was one of my first speeches being vulnerable. And I gave the speech, I told about racism, bullying, what I'd gone through, how, you know, I overcame it at that time. And I got off that stage and I was shaking. And I had this massive vulnerability hangover, right? I was like, oh gosh, people are going to judge me. What have I done?
Yeah.
All hell's going to break loose now, you know? And then at the end of that day, I had a young girl approach me. And I was afraid of what she was going to share, right? And I thought, oh gosh, what's she going to say? And she came up to me. I feel emotion, you know, because it was such a defining moment. Like, she came up to me and she was like, I think you've just saved my life.
Wow.
And she was going through racism and bullying as an Indigenous Australian in her school. And she shared with me that she'd been thinking those weeks prior that she might not want to live anymore. And when I told my story and what I went through and how I got through it, she was like, well, wow. And apparently I was confident when I was speaking. I didn't feel it, but she was like, you know, now you're getting up and being so confident. She was like, wow, maybe like what I'm going through, that challenge, like you said, will become the story that I can help people with later. Oh, I've got goosebumps.
Me too. Yeah.
And I remember that moment going, wow, our stories really matter. And vulnerability is really important. And that was the first moment when I started really reflecting on my past more. I'd always run away from it. And that was when I started thinking about little Jody, teenage Jody, what I'd gone through. What was my struggle into strength? And that's what led to the world stage of public speaking this year, sharing a story about my inner child, talking about how she loved the water. She was a water baby. And then she had trauma after trauma around the water. And she shut that part of her down to the point that she would tell people, I don't like the water. The water's not for me. Avoided the water at all costs. Yeah. And it was, I don't know, a few years ago, 3-4 years ago, that I embraced going snorkeling for the first time. So scary, but did that. And then a few months later, ended up becoming qualified at a deep water diver. And I was like, what?
Love that.
And so, you know, I didn't share all of those pieces in my speech, but I did share about coming back home to my inner child in loving the water. And then that carried on to other areas of my life too, of bringing the inner child into business. What can I do that I was afraid of doing in the past? What would my inner child love to bring into my relationships? And it's changed my life.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I shared that message on the stage.
Incredible. So beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah, for me, inner child work has been like so beautiful. But it's funny that I think of it as this modality when actually it's kind of just letting the core essence of who I am come through. And like I think my inner child just comes through so organically now. Like sometimes my wife will, like, like kind of laugh and say, "Oh, hey, little Paddy, I see you there," and I'm not even aware that he's coming through, but just because I feel so safe in that he just like shows up, and it might just be a real tenderness, or it might be even a little like just raw frustration or something, or but ultimately I think I first connected through it, again similar to you, through reconnecting with the things I loved as a kid. And for me that's really animals and nature, and now people that know me know that like everything I do is really about animals and nature, even things like leadership. And that is ultimately now a more evolved expression of still that inner child that just wants to be around beautiful animals. And
oh my goodness, I love that so much, and I'm so glad that your beautiful partner can identify that and mirror that back to you. So those moments of like, oh yeah, I'm so in alignment, and like inner Paddy is coming through, and even if it's that inner just raw emotion or frustration, other things, like just allowing the full expression of whatever's going on for us, right? I love that. And the cool thing is, like, the more and more you let your inner child, what you loved as a kid, come through, and that passion comes through, like your success just goes up and up and up. And I found that too with I mostly work with women. My level 1's for men and women, but my other 3 levels are mostly for women. When I work with the women, I see that the more and more they come home to what lit them up naturally, and their soul, joy as a child and in their upbringing, the more they come back to that, the more that their leadership style, their business, their speaking will start to align to that. And when that's in alignment, abundance flows, impact grows. It's just amazing, right? And this is why I think I've been able to even get to the world stage, is because I've come back to what are the messages that my little Jody would have loved to share. And if we can all just bring that approach, if that's the one thing everyone takes away, of just coming back to their natural state of joy and what lit them up, and they let that fuel themselves in business and in leadership and in speaking, magic will happen, things will flow.
Amazing.
And
So I hear in that if people wanted to try it out, what they can do is just really think back to their time in childhood and think about the kinds of things they were doing, the kinds of things they loved, even ask their parents potentially, and then also listen to what's coming up when they sit in silence and reflection about it, and there might be some surprising messages there.
Who knows what would come through when they just let the space, right? And one of the quotes I love sharing with my members is, we need space to create. And if we want to create an alignment, we need the space to sit with ourselves and let those things come up, and not let other people dictate what we should or shouldn't do, but really going back to our intuition, our truth, our heart. What do I want to do? Right? We listen to other even business coaches that tell us we should be focused on this audience because that's where the money is. I did that, and it was so challenging. Everything was so forced. As soon as I was like, who the hell do I want to serve? What do I want to do? What program do I want to run? Everything flowed. So I definitely recommend people start with that and build upon that in the way of going about life, business.
Incredible. Is there anything else you want to share with people listening today?
That their voice matters. The amount of times people think elevating their voice means public speaking, like, oh, give me the tools on body language, eye contact, vocal tonality, speech craft. But owning our voice is so much more than speaking on a stage. It's so much more than running a masterclass or other things. It's our everyday right. And my message to them would be to reflect on this, because I've been doing this work for years, and there's still another elevation to my voice. We don't want it to end, because otherwise life is very boring. But our potential is limitless. It's infinite. And so I would recommend for people to really sit down and really reflect through the lens of their voice, where in their life can there be the next elevation, and to then seek out within themselves the next steps, or to seek support to get those next steps, whatever it is. But I can guarantee if people start to see through the lens of their voice, speaking and owning their expression, and then they start to work on that, everything else will fall into place.
Amazing. So good to hear. Where can people find you if they want to find out more about your programs and just ways to connect with you? I'm very approachable. They can always message me on social media. So Facebook and LinkedIn. I am going to start Instagram more too. So it's Jody, Jody, and Dontje, Dontje. Sending me a message is a great idea for them, but they also can email me directly at namaste@jodydontje.com. Beautiful, which we'll put the links in the show notes as well. But
sure.
Incredible, Jody. Thank you so much for the conversation.
You're
Thanks
welcome.
for sharing your incredible voice and message with the world. It's a real privilege to know you and to call you a friend, and really excited for people to receive this and to take it and run with it, and hopefully get their voices out into the world on another level as well.
Oh, we need it.
Yeah.
We need their voices. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for having me on. I'm very grateful, and yeah, you're amazing.
Thank you. Okay, take care, everyone. Thanks for listening to Leaders with Heart. We hope you enjoyed the episode today. And if you would like to connect further with either myself or the guest, you can find the links in the show notes below. We also massively appreciate it when you support this podcast by sharing it with someone else who will benefit from it, subscribing, leaving a comment, leaving a review. It all helps us massively. And if you are a purpose-driven leader who's looking to elevate your performance, I'm a peak performance coach who does just that. So I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, have the most beautiful week, and we will see you next time. Take care.